Industry Inner Join, uplifting data literacy across Australia and bringing conversations from data leaders straight to your ears. Get the insider information. My name is Douglas, former data analyst, now founder of DR Analytics Recruitment, and we're about to hear from one data leader. Industry Inner Join, or Inner Join Podcast, Episode 8. Welcome, Milan Raicevic.
Thank you very much.
CIO of RMT Technologies, or Risk Management Technologies. PhD in Astrophysics as well. Having led data science teams before and consulting CVH, the floor is yours today. What do you love about what you do?
So when I was thinking of making my own consulting company, I had an idea of how I'm going to call it. And I basically based it on my favorite movie, which is Pulp Fiction. And my favorite character in that movie is Mr. Wolf, if you know Harvey Keitel. So he goes into the movie and he knocks on the door and he opens the door. He introduces himself. I'm Mr. Wolf. I solve problems. So that's how I see my job. And that's what I love about it. You come in and you solve problems with any way you can. So my best tool set is science. This is what always interested me as a young person. And that's what, where my career started. But that's not where it's limited at this moment anymore. So science is just one of the things in the toolkit. Yet my goal is always to just move things forward and make something better in the world.
Sounds like loving solving problems. Perhaps over the introduction, in a short intro, can you share a little bit about how you've come from university in the UK to Australia now as CIO?
That's a boring story. So, yes, I was born in Serbia, grew up there. I did my bachelor's in Belgrade and did astrophysics there, and then did my PhD in England. So I went to Durham University and I studied in the Institute of Computational Cosmology. So I really targeted that place because when I kind of picked where I'm going to go with my studies, I was really split between computer science and astrophysics. I'm a lifelong programmer. I started programming when I was 6, that kind of special kind of nerd. Loved old computers, started with a Spectrum ZX UK computer. And I was really wanted to go in that direction, but then I sort of fell in love with science and astrophysics on the way around my high school. And then I picked that direction with the intention of always sort of marrying the two. And that institute in Durham is actually one of the best places in the world where they do big simulations of the universe. And that's something that I always really, when I went into astrophysics, that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't that big of into observations. I'm not the one to, stare through a telescope. I really loved the big picture, cosmology, and also how you study that is really computers. So I picked that place and I was really lucky to get a spot there. And that got me into, professional astrophysics. I did my PhD there, and then after that I moved on to doing postdoc in Leiden. So that's Leiden in the Netherlands. It's a very famous university, also an old one in Europe, but not necessarily that well known outside of Europe. I spent 3 years there. And then in those first 7 years, I was doing science. I was a scientist, but it became obvious to me that it's not a career that I'm going to stick with for the long haul. Not necessarily because I didn't like the work. I really love the work. I still love the work. So doing the actual work of, building these models, explaining the world and all that, it's more like everything else around academia I didn't necessarily like. I would say, the biggest problem I had was actually writing papers at that time. So I when I was younger, I really couldn't handle an empty page. So if ChatGPT existed back then, I probably still would be a scientist because I would have, a starting point. It was always like if I write it and I can edit it until cows come home, but just to get going, it was a struggle. And that really is how you're evaluated as successful in academia. You just have to publish or perish. That's the term. So after that, I decided to leave academia. My partner at the time and my wife now, she's still an academic. So we had that famous two-body problem, like two academics trying to be in the same place at the same time. So this also helped with that. So after I quit academia, I sort of followed her around the world. So she worked in Paris. I spent some time in Paris, and then we moved to the US where she got a position, and that's where I moved into data science. So again, it was that position. It was 2014, and data science was still fairly new. It was maybe 2 years since the term was even coined. So I was again split. Do I go into hardcore computer science? I had some options there to do hardware programming and things like that. But then, hey, here it is. It's called science. I love science. Let's go there. So I had my first job in the health insurance industry in the US. It's sort of a small company. It was a really lovely experience and got me going. And after that, my wife got a position in Perth, Curtin University, and then we moved here. And then I sort of went through a series of jobs, starting in consulting. So that's something that was an easy place to enter, especially that time, 2015, 16, when data science was kind of starting up. Everybody wanted to do something. Nobody knew what to do. So consultants were really, in demand. So I worked for a couple of consulting companies. But then in that part of the industry also, I didn't necessarily enjoy it, because one thing that I really didn't like about the experience is you always sort of go back to beginning. You do your 3-month project, you sort of get your data, define the problem, build a model, present the model, great, next company, do the same thing over and over again. I really wanted to actually go back to what I was doing in science and sort of dig deep into a subject. And I also found that, you have to dig deep to properly solve the problems. So after those couple of years in consulting, I got a job at CBH, and I was a lead data scientist for marketing and trading there for a couple of years. So I really enjoyed that. That was excellent. But then an opportunity came up from RMT. They were building a new product that was in this data science space, and they really needed somebody to take the lead. And then I jumped ship, and I'm still there 5 years later.
Wow. And that simulation originally from university perhaps comes into risk management technologies now as well.
It comes in more often than you would think. So one of my favorite data science moments was when I was working in one of those consulting jobs. And we had a problem where the engineers all said the wind is the solution, right? So the wind is the thing that affects the machinery the most. It will tell you the most about how the machinery behaves, a predicting maintenance project. And we had no wind data. We only had one wind sensor on a hill next to the plant that we were trying to model. And I actually used an algorithm that I used in my computational cosmology days to try to model how the wind is going to move through the plant, because we had a plant model. And it actually worked really, really well. So it's the best, if I sort of lay out all of the different ideas I had in data science, this was the most effective one. So just to throw some numbers there. So this was an uplift in model accuracy of around 10%. So there was nothing else. No other feature ever came close. No model choice ever came close. It was like plus minus 5%. This was a 10%. This was going from, making a guess to solving the problem.
Wow.
And it's just reusing something I learned 5 years ago.
So lesson learned, if there's no wind sensors, you can always get Milan to come simulate it.
Computational cosmologist, yes.
Nothing. There's no excuse for no sensors. Wow, so that's Serbia, UK, Netherlands. Was Germany in there?
France, US, Australia.
France, US, Australia. Wow, that's a journey. And you settled here? Is this the permanent home?
Yes, we've been here for more than 10 years. My son was born here, so he's 10 now. It's definitely a place where I want to stay for the long haul. But I still follow my wife through the world. So if she gets a better position somewhere in the world, it's still on the cards that we might move.
Yeah, right. What's she studying as well?
So she's a professor at Curtin in planetary science. So the way I describe it is geology in space. She will take offense to that. It's not the right description, but
yeah.
She studies the impacts of meteorites in different solar system bodies.
Well, I'm curious to what your dinner table conversations would be like. That'd be up here, I imagine. That's really awesome. I'm curious about, you've seen the data science boom, and now we're obviously going through the AI boom. What are the similarities or dissimilarities that you see there?
Well, to me, it's the same thing. AI is just another machine learning model that is found a bigger niche than previous models. So, we described the old machine learning models. That's why I call them machine learning as narrow models. Now you have a more general one. But if you think about it, still the Gen AI models that do language and video and all that, they're still basically fit for one domain, except that domain is way wider than anything you did before. So, before you would do a forecasting model just trying to say how, a sensor is going to behave. Now you're trying to say, can I predict the next word? And so it is a continuation of the previous boom in my mind. But it is also something new. So that's the way I think about it. I learned most in understanding LLMs from Ilya Sutskever, who was founder of OpenAI and ex-chief scientist. So the way he describes an LLM is it's an extremely efficient compression algorithm. So the idea is if you want to take all the data in the world, right, and try to compress it into something manageable, 10 terabytes of data or whatever, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to delete every byte that normal compression does. You have to have something extra on top that will tell you what these missing bytes would be. So you can delete even more bytes so you can compress it. And he's making an argument that it's basically the understanding, the world model that enables you to actually take all of this data and crunch it into something manageable. And that's why LLMs work the way they do. So a story that he tells is, imagine that you have a detective novel, right? And you're asking the model to learn to predict the final word of that model, and the final word is, who is the killer? The killer is the final detective says it. Poirot comes out and says the killer is. So that's the thing you're trying to predict. So that word is never mentioned anywhere in the book, right? But to correctly predict it, you have to really understand what the book does and understand what it's telling you, give all the clues to be the detective. And that's what LLMs really do, is they figure out this way through that compression process that the transformer does to do the inference on the information they have that's actually predictive in the realm of language.
What do you think the biggest impact is for a data analyst, a data scientist in their day-to-day? What do you think the change will be?
Well, the change is here. So we just spoke about it before. Is like, are people actually coding, or they're just asking Claude or ChatGPT to do it? I think, it used to be that every analyst needed to learn to code. That might not be the case anymore. So the coding tools, especially on that level where you don't really necessarily have to build a very big software solution, you have to build a Salesforce, you just need to build a dashboard. The current coding tools are more than capable. And this is where then you start distinguishing yourself, like what are you trying to do, what is your message, and can you guide that tool correctly to deliver what you want. So more understanding than actually going into the details of what the tools do. So that's already an obvious thing. But also, the way that we get information now is easier than ever. So this is also not new. So I'm old enough to remember the internet coming to being. So when I was in high school, the Google came and then Wikipedia came and all that stuff. And it was all very new and nobody knew what to do with it and nobody trusted it. I keep reminding people that at some point schools were banned from using Wikipedia because it couldn't be trusted. Same thing where we are now with ChatGPT, right? So it's a new thing that we don't understand that well. But in the end, what it does, it gives you information that you had to struggle to get before. So it collates it. Google will give you all the pieces. LLM will collate those pieces. And that's what we do as well, is like we don't necessarily trust the raw LLM. We want it to do the web search and get the information to fill up the context. So I also see it as a much better Google search. And that's also affecting everything that a knowledge worker does.
What would you see the future of the workforce looking like? From what you're saying, it's less development, more understanding the business problem and the world problem that's trying to be solved.
So that's another thing. And if you extend the story through the beginnings of data science, I always thought that's where data science as a whole was going. So we had that one moment, say, 2015, 16, 17, where Kaggle was a big thing. I don't know if you remember that. And you had a whole group of people whose value was they really understood how these models worked. Like you could know which one am I, picking an SVM or picking an XGBoost and which parameters to use and all that stuff because I trained for that for hours and hours and hours. And then AutoML tools came out and it's just brute force, try everything. Something you
See
get the
what works
best one. Yeah, exactly. So this is the next continuation of that. Is AutoML, you still had to understand a lot of how something works because you had to pick the features, you had to sort of tweak the features so they give you the best understanding. Now you can just ask ChatGPT, hey, I'm trying to model this thing. What do you think I should use? You can spit out a bunch of features, and then you can do that brute force search on a much higher level because now you're doing feature engineering with real intelligence, which is what the current AI gives you. That also takes away from what you were doing before. So it's tough to say. I think already was the role of a data scientist was diminishing already, and the value was really in doing the whole chain of data transformation. So we started there. So when I started as data scientist, we were all called unicorns because we knew all of these things that are now called data engineer, data scientist, data translator, whatever. We all used to do the same thing. Then it got broken up into different tasks. I think that's kind of going to contract again into one person that needs to have that overarching picture and then use those tools to deliver.
If you've got data scientists in your team, but if you were counseling a data scientist on their career, What would you say to them for how they should be continuing to learn and upskill?
So I'm biased because I come from real science. For me, it was, and I had these conversations through the years, right? You have a lot of people who want to go into this space. For me, it was always, and I'm repeating myself, about solving the problem, right? So what you really want to do is you want to go in and you want to learn to solve real hard problems and what you need to do there. So I always advised people that if you want to be a data scientist, right, especially people just starting their bachelor's, if you want to be a data scientist, just be a scientist. So you'll pick up all of these tools, especially in most modern sciences, the biology, physics, all fundamental sciences. I wouldn't say social sciences do a lot of statistics. The biggest statistical improvements are actually coming from psychology often, so because they do a lot of surveys. So any kind of science is better training than just saying I'm going to just learn machine learning and then kind of figure it out from there. So I was never a big proponent of data science degrees, but they still exist. And I think that advice still stays because that data science degree is that limited view that I mentioned earlier. I really think you want a broader view, and going into science and doing, solving something that nobody else has done, this is what you have to do to a PhD, is really valuable.
Look, I agree on the data science. I don't want to discount anyone that spent
of course.
3 years or 2 years doing a master's. But there needs to be, I've found the best data scientists have an understanding of the business process, and they've either worked in the industry and they can then apply it. I feel like a data science degree is neutral and it's got nothing to hold on to and apply.
Yeah, absolutely.
Need that knowledge as well. Yeah. So I guess your answer is solve problems.
Yeah. I'm boring.
Yeah.
Where I started, it's still where I'm at.
I've had that answer before. How does a junior find the right problems to solve? So, for example, I speak to a graduate data scientist and they're going, I really want to get into the industry and get a job. And if I go, hey, go solve problems.
Well, that's where, my approach with saying go into science, the problems that are obvious. And if you're interested in science, you'll just pick them up, right? So, from my astronomical background, you get interested in, doing observations or whatever. You want to take a telescope, you want to point out, take a picture. You have to process that picture in some way. You have to learn all of the things that go into signal processing to make a pretty picture of the nebula that you liked once, right? If you just go and say, I want to have a job in this is where you're going to struggle trying to find the right problem because you're not engaged with that problem. Right? To your point as well, the best people come from industry because they're already engaged with this. They know it. They have a lot of problems they want to solve, and they're just picking up a new tool set. If I just have a knife and I need to cut something, that's not the right approach.
You're right. That seems to be the approach. What type of problems are you solving at Risk Management Technology?
So Risk Management Technologies, we're a software company, fairly small one, and we have 3 different products, and they're all targeting risk management in different sort of domains. So our main one, and the one where the focus is at the moment, is called ChemAlert. And this is a suite of products for managing, working with hazardous chemicals. So a piece there is getting the right information, which is actually required by law by the manufacturers to publish it. So it's something called a safety data sheet, an STS document, where they basically declare these are all the things you have to worry about when you're handling this chemical, and that's fairly standardized. But then also our tool actually interprets that in different ways and help people who work with these things understand, because that safety data sheet is fairly technical. There's a lot of shorthands, a lot of numbers that tell you things that you need to know. So we translate that in different ways to actually help people make the right decision. And then we also build processing around the different workflow tools and things like that will basically help you safely manage your chemical work. Now we're expanding that into more of a procurement and a whole product stewardship cycle of, from, buying to disposing of a chemical, what you should do. The first focus was always on health and safety, and it still remains the number one thing. But that's, the data science work we do at the moment around all of this stuff is about figuring out how best to extract information in a standardized way, and then actually how to use it to collate it in different sources and different sort of applications to tell you more information about a chemical than a manufacturer would.
So the initial problem is OHS, health and safety, then you're moving to the whole supply chain is the business expansion plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And mostly Perth-based? Is there a global presence?
So the company itself is Perth-based, but we have a global presence. So most of our clients are Australian across the board. We have thousands of clients in Australia, pretty much anybody who works with chemicals, hospitals, mining sites, universities. But also we're going into globally. So we have some clients in the Southeast Asia, and now we're trying to expand into the US. That's the next big growth market for us.
Yeah, right. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Are you mostly, as a CIO, what does your oversight look like? What was your day-to-day look like, I think is a good question.
So we were talking about data science a lot, and to be fully frank, I'm still a data scientist. So we are a small company. So there's maybe 70 of us in total, and the whole technical team is maybe 20 people. So that includes data science developers, SREs, pretty much DBAs, anybody working on a technical side of the products. And we all end up wearing multiple hats. So I started with the company as a lead data scientist, and I was focusing on one product specifically. And I developed that thing and brought a lot of tools that enabled that product to work, which then my boss wanted to actually apply across the board for the whole company. And that's when I was made the CIO. So I still am fairly technical. I still build things, but I also govern the strategy of where we're going with how we manage the data, what data we're collecting, how security is more on a CTO side, but I contribute in that bit as well. So it's kind of a two-lane approach.
Mm-hmm. So looking at applying the data science to the products you have existing.
Yeah.
And with that comes the data cleansing, enrichment, ingestion, everything there. 20 people is a lot for your team as well. So you must have hired a few over the time.
Well, it's not my team only. So as I was saying, it's developers. So my data team is fairly small. So I would say 5 in total, including me. So 3 data scientists, 2 data engineers. And also, again, we have people wearing multiple hats. So not everybody's 100% on the data side.
The full stack data scientist is coming out.
Very much so, yeah.
For people that are doing interviews in the audience, or they're looking at new jobs, or just curious, what traits do you look for when you're interviewing someone or hiring?
So I think the full stack data scientist really is the description. So we always come out and say, we're small, we don't necessarily pay the most. So the big companies around town will always beat us on price. But what we give people is we give you the opportunity to own a problem and solve a problem by themselves. So that's part of our interviewing process is basically looking for people who will be able to do that, who are self-starters, who love to learn, who love to work on the tools that we work, who love to engage with others. We're fairly not necessarily against remote work, but it doesn't really work for us. It's something that's a part of a company culture. We tried, especially during the pandemic, like you had to, but we find that pretty much everybody wanted to go back to the office because we do a very collaborative and very active. We cut down on communication and writing, so we do a lot of speaking, and that comes back and bites you. But also it makes you move faster, and we still have a little bit of a startup culture, even though the company's been around for almost 30 years.
How do you maintain that startup culture? It can be hard to do.
It's really coming from our founder. So he's, again, another person wearing multiple hats. He's still doing sales. He's still doing designs. He's across the board in everything. He loves to be involved in everything that the company does. And he wants to work in that sort of very proactive, fast pace. So he loves when he does a design, he doesn't want it to just sit on a shelf for 3 months until the designers get to it and put it in a product. When he's done it, in 2 weeks it's in the product. So that pace is kept there, and it keeps things interesting, but also keeps us moving really fast.
Fascinating. And what does introducing AI into RMT look like for you? What are the policies, the strategies, or what technology is being used?
So we started with AI at RMT before the ChatGPT moment. So as I said, I came to start working on this new product. It's called Critical Insight, which is an AI-driven product, where we brought in the early LLMs as soon as I joined. So we were using the first versions of LLMs. I don't know if you heard the name BERT and Roberta and these kind of things, the first LLMs. So we started there. We used GPT-2, we used GPT-3 when they came out. So we were already familiar with working with Gen AI. And as soon as ChatGPT came out, we kind of embraced it as a research tool. And we do the same thing with pretty much anything that came out. We started using, I was just commenting on that the other day when we were talking about it, we used Claude Code from day 2 when it came out. I paid Anthropic and my team started using it. So the way we approach it is it's a tool for the job. So we are not trying to replace anybody. We're trying to empower people, and we're not trying to dictate to people what they should use. So when we picked Claude Code for the whole technical team, we had a discussion saying, hey, we're going to give some money to this. What tool should we use? We kind of trialed different ones, and we picked Claude Code at that moment, which was more than 6 months ago now. And we just say, here you go. We don't even pay subscriptions. So at that point, we made a decision saying we're not going to force anybody to use these things. What we do is we have a budget on the pay-as-you-go thing and say, if one person wants to use everything, they can. Nobody else has to use it. It's just there, use it. And then every month I kind of look at, the usage of this thing, and the line just keeps going like that. And now we blew through the budget 3 times over. So it's really been embraced, but it's been embraced because we wanted people to find a way to get value out of it. And that's our approach with all of the tools. So we use those APIs to build little internal tools for our non-technical staff to put AI into their processes. That's another thing that I kind of try to push non-technical people to use ChatGPT, try to develop, or Claude Code, to develop their own tools. That's not necessarily something that's stuck just yet, but they do come up with ideas and they ask us to build things. And now with these tools, we really can build a proof of concept really quickly, and we're getting a lot of value out of that. So that's on the development side. Obviously, I think I mentioned it already, we do use AI quite a bit for processing of the data itself. So that's something I would say is an obvious win, and this going back to those days of birth. LLMs really supercharged the NLP, the natural language processing toolkits. So we do work with a lot of messy text data, and just plugging an LLM there to just clean it all up has been a godsend.
I found that sounds great. I found that the people that distinguish themselves in using Claude Code or Cursor or AI tools are able to talk with full utility and answer the question about governance, quality as well. So what do you have in place within the company?
So being such a small company, we don't necessarily have that many gateways in the development process. So our gateway really is at the actual release of the software. So the client data is sequestered. Nobody in dev has any access to it. So that's the prime thing for us, is we don't mess with the client data. And then in dev, we basically say, hey, just do whatever. In a sense, use whatever tool you want, right? To get the best code that you can. You're responsible for the thing that's going to be put forward for production. And at that point, we'll evaluate it. So when a PR comes out, and if PR is a vibe-coded mess, your lead dev will have a chat with you, right? But we'll never say, okay, you have to use Copilot because Microsoft has better security for whatever we have than OpenAI. So we looked at all of their security practices when we're doing this, and none of them satisfy. So because they cannot guarantee they're not using any of these things, nor do any of the things that you put in for their own training. So they can say it, but there is no way that you can verify that in any way. So then we made the call and say we'll just use the best tool for the job. And the code is not where the value of our products is. The value really is in the data and the processes, because we also do service work around the products. And this is where we help people deploy and implement our solutions. This is where a lot of value comes from as well. We find that it's much better to have a product that works faster than worrying about whether Microsoft is going to steal these 10 lines of code from us or not.
All right. And what about personally? What's your sentiments? Are you using Claude at home? Are you using OpenAI?
So I tend to try to use everything. So this is how it starts. Is I kind of brought the AI coding into the company. Not that I invented it or anything. It's just I was one of the first interested in this. I said we brought GPT-3 first. We had an OpenAI account and we were using it for coding a little bit. So for me, it's a personal interest, and I kind of try everything that's there. So I have an account on pretty much every every major thing. So OpenAI, Anthropic, XAI, Gemini, all of those. I run LLMs at home, the usual thing. Olama, just running them on my MacBook, these kind of things. My main tool for coding is OpenCode, which is a coding agent similar to Claude Code, but it allows you to pick whichever model you want to use. So that makes it easy to do. But also I use Cursor, I use Claude Code. Claude Code is always there. Gemini as well. Now I'm trying out Codex, which is OpenAI's new GUI for agents. It's not necessarily tied into just coding. It's more like for general use. So that's why I'm trying something new. It's a different kind of workflow than what Claude Code would have. I haven't dug into OpenClaw, which is the hit at the moment. So that's something I looked at it, of course, when it came out, and it was like, oh, give us all of your personal information and something will happen. It's like, no, thank you. That's where I draw my line.
How do you stay up to date with everything that's coming out? Because the treadmill of learning and what's available is running at 20 kilometers an hour.
So I find, and this is, again, my personal impression, I think not much is actually happening in the LLM architecture side. So you can say a new model comes out and with it comes new capabilities, but the way we use LLMs now is pretty much the same that we used it when ChatGPT came out. So the main points of how do you build an agent, right? It's a combination of a model, prompts, and function calls, right? So the function calls are just text that the model spits out and tells your computer what to run. So it's on you to build it. So we've been building these systems for a while and we keep building them. So I don't really see that thing changing that much. The only thing that really changes is the models, especially I think this is where Anthropic is having the big wins at the moment. They are training the models to the tools they want them to use. So Claude Code is the best one at coding because they have their evals set up for coding, and Claude Code defines its own tools and they train to those tools. So one big thing that they've done, and this is why I switched to Claude Code when it came out first, and I used earlier agents, Cursor being one of them. The big thing that they discovered is that you don't really have to be very precious about defining your tools too much. So the only thing you can do is just tell your agents to use Bash. And if it's doing coding for you, right? So it used to be that there was a tool called CodeMap or something, and every tool had a different approach to it. But it would be like an MCP to find in your code base where the thing you're trying to find is. And they just said, use grep, just do the search tools that you have on your terminal. And that seemed to work way better. And that's what they kept pushing on, and that's what they keep doing. So now if you use these coding agents, they actually start writing Bash scripts for you. They also, some OpenAI more than Anthropic, they will actually solve the problem by writing a little Python script to run it. So it really comes down to these tools and the models being really tuned to use those tools to the best of their abilities.
With so much there, what would you do if you were graduating at this time? Where would you? Are you going staying to hard sciences? Are you just going to skip university and go straight into Claude Code and have fun and play? What's the strategy?
I'm biased, so I am not. I actually really enjoy coding. So even though I use all of these tools, I try not to use them too much. I use them in a very specific ways. I use them more to learn and to solve boring stuff. But I really try to keep my hands on the wheel and actually direct these things, which is not necessarily the vibe coder's way. The vibe coder's way is, hands off the wheel and hope for the best. I really hate that thing, like it makes a mistake and you don't know what the mistake is and you tell it to fix it and then you hope. I don't do that. So I wouldn't go into vibe coding myself either at the moment. The act of building something is where the joy is, and you having that sort of personal connection with the thing you're building, piece of software or piece of art or whatever else you're doing, building a table, right? That's the joy, is you being involved and intimately involved in the process. So that was always the thing that I enjoyed about the whole thing, and that's where I would probably go again. So I wouldn't necessarily say skip university, or actually no, stand corrected there. I'm not necessarily saying that university is required. I just wouldn't go into vibe coding thinking, here I'm going to go make a bunch of money by just yelling at a computer. So that's not something I would recommend. And then what I would say is go and follow your passion, the thing that you're really driven, that you want to learn and you want to engage with, because that's going to keep you going, right? That's going to keep you fighting with whatever tool you have.
I like that. Find problems you like and figure out how to solve them. with more modern tools. 20 years ago, it was the simulation tools that you had available at university, and now it's more available on your laptop as well. All right. What would you say your greatest achievement is in all of your working history? You could do personal as well. You could do personal and work.
It's I was thinking of that in preparation for the interview, and I think the one thing that I can come up, I don't have a greatest achievement. There is no one thing that I would say pick as a peak, right? And that's like the thing that I go back to. I would say my biggest achievement is just having a happy life. That's what I always wanted. I am a CIO. I am in the C-suite right now. Career was never the goal for me. I was never a career-minded person. I really just wanted to enjoy life and just do things that I like to do, and always hoped to, something, everything's going to work out in a sense. And going into science, you kind of have to do it because, there is no career prospects for an astrophysicist. It's a very, very tough thing to do. It's kind of, we compare it to arts, right? It's like you paint because you love to paint, not because you're going to sell.
I think your being is a credit to that may not be true all the time.
Not all the time, but there is not a direct line. Study astrophysics, get a PhD, become CIO. That is not a thing, right? Is you do a PhD because you love it and you bumble about and maybe you luck out. So I would say that throughout my life I was able to deliver on that vision of just doing the things that I like, not compromising the quality of my life and not compromising the quality of my family's life, and also being helpful for people and making life easier for people.
I think there's a lot to be said about just being happy.
Yeah.
Everyone's chasing it often in recruitment. I hear a lot about chasing the next dollar figure, when a lot of work is not considered how much happiness can be brought, whether it's the culture, the commute, all the flexibility involved as well.
Yeah. It's not even about that. It's just, being happy to go to work. Right? That's what you want. It's like you should enjoy a little bit at least of what you do. And
how do you balance happiness with solving hard problems that are difficult?
You have to be, a specific kind of personality like I am, who enjoys a hard problem, and then it's easy.
Find the problems. I guess on the more difficult side, what would you say your biggest fuck is then?
Okay, I did not think about that one. Try not to dwell. Maybe revisiting that the talk of why I quit academia. It's not that I consider it as a cup or anything like that. It's the fact that I left. Sort of I ran away instead of going to something better. That's after that, from a career point of view, I always try to move to the next better thing. At that point, I just didn't like where I was, and I didn't like where the life's going to take me. And I kind of felt like I ran away. And I was, for 6 months until I figured out what's the next thing that I'm going to do. It was quite an unpleasant experience, thinking of trying to find that thread to pull on to go forward.
It's like you failed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what it felt like a little bit, right? Especially because that was the goal. Like, I'm going to be a scientist. It was always kind of a part of my, when you ask a 10-year-old kid what are you going to be, that was my answer. So it did feel like a failure, but I left for the right reasons, and I don't regret it for a second anymore. I never regretted it when I left either, because it's just like that uncertainty and not knowing what's next. That was tough to handle.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's lovely that your biggest has turned into something you're grateful for, and where you are now as well, part of the journey.
That's how it should be. I think that's the story of
the ideal.
Yeah, you go up or you go down.
What would you say outside of work? What makes you you?
I guess it's another thing where the whole thing started with me. I've always had a bajillion interests. It's like I just like to do many different things. So when I was in high school, like you look at TV shows and all that, like there's cliques and all that. I was never in one clique. I was in 15 because I was interested in so many different things. So hobbies that I have time to engage with right now and trying to. Music. So I play guitar and I'm learning to play piano. So that's something that I basically try to do every day. That's really nice and relaxing and away from the screen. Board gaming. So I was a big gamer growing up. Computers, that's how you get into programming, because you're into video games. But I discovered the joy of cardboard. So that's where I am now. And most of my gaming is actually done on the table with family or friends. What else? Trying to do a little bit of sports. I used to play basketball. I'm not in the form to do that anymore. But gym and cycling are the things that I also spend time on, and trying to get more into swimming, but not finding the time, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like you're handling a lot, so there may not be time for that.
Exactly.
If we were to look back on this in 2 years' time, what would be your prediction for where AI data technology is?
Where it is. So I did a panel, and there was a question somebody asked to predict the date of when AGI is going to come, and I threw a number of 3001.
Okay.
I'm not a big believer in the extremes on both ends of the AI story. So I don't think it's useless and that it's going to disappear in 2 years when the economy crashes. I don't think that's going to happen. I also don't think that we're going to hit singularity and have a digital god that's going to solve our problems. I think truth is somewhere in the middle. I think the LLM tools that we have today are very useful today, and that's how we sort of approach them, how I approach them. Like, it solves the problem now, I'm going to use it now without worrying necessarily where it's going to go tomorrow. I think they're still going to keep improving, and we're going to find new niches and new use cases for these tools. These tools are also going to grow, and they're going to have access into more and more data in our lives, and that's where I think a lot of the value is going to come from. That's the open claw we mentioned, right? So it is kind of insane what they're doing right now, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to go in that direction. It's going to become much more useful and controlled in terms of security and your own life being well-being. So I think that's where it's also going to go. I think AI is going to be a tool that we learn to use, same as we did the internet. So it's going to be very disruptive. It's going to change a lot of things, but it's not going to fundamentally change the human experience. I think we still will be going to the offices 9 to 5 in 2 years' time.
And in office as well. I think the human and the community part will be more important than anything else.
But you would hope. Internet didn't really work out like that, I would say. Internet sort of pushed us more apart.
Yeah.
AI has the same tendency. We'll see where it goes.
It will. Milan, thank you for the podcast. Let's finish on that note.
My
Appreciate your time. And perhaps we come back here in 2 years and see if what you said was true.
That would be great. Thank you very much.